is Lions on Tap, a weekly look inside the Lions Den. Highlights, interviews, and a look ahead to what's next for the Leos. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Baker, Nik Kowalski, and Bob the Moj Marjanovich.
Welcome to another edition of BC Lions on Tap on AM 730. It's the Moj. Bob Marjanovich, as the man said. Baker and Kowalski riding shotgun as we come to you tonight from Resurrection Spirits in Vancouver. Of course, the East Village, 1672 Franklin. Mark Woodall, Chris Meyer, and the crew hosting us here, and what an establishment this is. Fellas, I'm being real disciplined tonight. I've had one old-fashioned, and I'm going to just maybe another one, and that'll be it, because if I have a couple more, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah, the day before the game is always, you got to button down, be responsible. Yeah, good call. Love it here. Love the spot, and I'll tell you what, felt a little nostalgic driving in along Hastings, going by the P&E Playland, the site of the old Empire Field, the Tempire Stadium. I'm not quite as old as you, so I don't remember the original Empire.
Wow, shot across the bow there.
I'm just saying, it was cool driving in past a couple of great Vancouver landmarks.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a lot to talk about because it was a great weekend for the BC Lions, knocking off the Edmonton Elks by a score of 22-0 at BC Place Stadium on Saturday in front of 33,000 fans. And the fact that, there was such a buzz with this team heading into the game. They didn't disappoint on the field, and they didn't disappoint off the field with the LL Cool J concert along with all the festivities. Nick, you were doing a lot of the shooting, videography work for the Lions. I mean, you caught a lot of this, and, man, I imagine you saw firsthand just how much of a buzz there was.
Yeah, over 500 gigabytes of footage on Friday and Saturday. And for those who don't know, that just means a lot of footage. But it really started on Friday, and the panel coming out to Terry Fox Plaza and having one of those only in the CFL moments where we have Lucky Whitehead waving pom-poms during the back of a live broadcast for CFL on TSN. It was a really special weekend, and, capped off with a great win. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, to me, getting there before the game about an hour or so, and there was just a buzz in the stadium. And, it was really kind of magic because, people were pumped up. They're pumped up about the concert. They're pumped up about the game. And, again, the Lions didn't disappoint. LL Cool J didn't disappoint. And it was a great, great afternoon. And, as much as we look at that afternoon and say it was great, it's just a building block for what this franchise wants to do. When you talk to Lamar Dolman, he wants each and every game to be like that. And I'm not talking about having a concert each and every game, but he wants fans leaving the building saying, I had a great experience today, right? And, hey, it's a solid beginning to the season. Now we just got to keep building on it and see what happens. Now, on the field, 22-0 against the Edmonton Elks. Bake, first time the Lions pitch a shutout since 1977. Jerry Taggy, the Cardiac Kids, Toronto Argonauts. I was probably at that game at Empire, but I don't remember. It was so long ago. But that's, 45 years without in between shutouts?
Yes, and speaking of Empire Stadium, and getting late in the game, it's my responsibility to inform people these historical facts. Looked it up, our history files. Oh, it's been that long, of course. The team has been shut out more recently. We won't talk about that. But, when you really peel the layers of it, they've never had a shutout win at BC Place. It had been, 4.5 decades like we talked about. And really, it is a credit to Ryan Phillips and the defense. Basically, his third year running the defense, second year officially as defensive coordinator. You come to practice, you were there today, you just see the buy-in from these players. Youngsters, veterans alike, they love playing for this D coordinator, and that clearly is translated.
Well, I think the other thing, too, when you look at that game was just that they set the tempo early. Even though those first two plays were negated, the one penalty against Gary Peters took away the interception on the first pass of the game by Taylor Cornelius of the Edmonton Elks. And then even on that third and short where Kyle Loxley had the quarterback sneak, and the ball was stripped out of his hands by Quincy Mosier, taken to the house. On the field, they never blew the whistle. I mean, you see the officials running down the field like, this is a live play, and yet when they go to the command center, they said that forward progress had been stopped, so they gave them, Edmonton that is, the first down, and took away the 6 points off the board. But those first two plays, I think, just set the tempo for the rest of the afternoon for that defense. We're going to be aggressive, and guess what? As I wrote in my column today for Black Press, they were the hammer, not the nail. We're going to be the hammer, you're going to be the nail today, and that's what happened in that first series, especially with those first two plays. And as a result, the Lions defense had an exemplary game. And, man, the one thing that I wish we would have seen is Josh Banks getting a quarterback sack. And I talked about this during the broadcast. People don't realize when they look at that Lions defense how valuable Josh Banks is. He doesn't get stats. He had 15 tackles in his first year, 15 tackles in his next year. He didn't have any quarterback sacks. But last year, this guy was voted as the most valuable player on the defense by his teammates because he just goes in each game in, game out, and just does his job. And his job doesn't have a lot of glory to it. It's occupying two blockers on running plays so the linebackers now can get to the ball carrier. It's basically pushing the pocket back so guys like Betts and Menard can get in there and, have a quarterback sack, and the quarterback can't step up because there's nowhere to step up. So there's an expression they use for many years, and that is you don't make the tackle, but you make the play. And that's what Josh Banks does for the BC Lions. And it would have been nice to see him get that quarterback sack, but a penalty negated that as well. So lot to get to. Of course, we will talk about the upcoming game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well, because the Lions are in Winnipeg on Thursday to take on the Bombers. And this is going to be a great litmus test for this team as we move forward. But the man who is going to lead the charge, lead the troops into Winnipeg is here. He is Lions head coach Nik Campbell, and he's going to join us in our next segment. So looking forward to that. We'll hear from head coach Nik Campbell. It's Bob the Moj Marjanovich along with Matt Baker. We're coming to you from Resurrection Spirits in Vancouver, 1672 Franklin. If you're in the neighborhood, pop on by. You're listening to BC Lions on Tap on AM 730 in the Lions Audio Network.
Now, back to Lions on Tap. Here again is Bob Marjanovich.
Coming to you tonight from Resurrection Spirits in the East Village of Vancouver, 1672 Franklin. If you're in the neighborhood, pop on by. Great little vibe happening here. And if you are ever around here and have the opportunity to check out this great establishment, we recommend you do so. Check out resurrectionspirits.com for more info on the web. It's the Moj, Bob Marjanovich, along with Matt Baker and Nik Kowalski, another edition of Lions on Tap. And we're thrilled to have the head coach of the BC Lions join us on location, head coach Nik Campbell. This is where the people can make noise and clap. So there you go. You guys can all clap for Coach. There you go. Yeah. They were quiet before. They didn't want to interrupt us. And Coach comes on, he gets the big ovation.
Very polite crowd.
Yeah. Well, first off, congratulations on the victory. It must feel pretty good to be 2-0 at this point.
Yeah, it was. It was a big win. It's always good to start fast. It was big to win in Calgary, and then always good to get a win at home. But the key thing is we got to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. As great as that weekend was with everything both on and off the field, I mean, the 24-hour rule, you get to enjoy it for maybe the night. The next day it's looking forward to head to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of having success during a season is the ability to move on, whether you win or whether you lose. So you're right. We do tell them to celebrate it for the evening, but then you got to wake up the next day and get ready for the next one. And particularly this week, we call it a 5-day week because we play Saturday, Thursday. So this week has happened very quickly. We're already hopping on a plane tomorrow to Winnipeg.
Coach, do you notice with a veteran team that's a little easier to do than perhaps if you have a younger team that likes to soak it in a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it is. I think guys that have been around understand, that it's what's in front of you. This is what's important. So, and the ability of understanding of taking care of themselves and getting rest and getting treatment and studying the game plan and all that stuff. It happens quickly, and the guys that have been through that before understand it.
I want to reset what was a big storyline from day one of camp, the quest in the backfield to replace James Butler. Looking at the league stats today, Taquan Mizell, I think, actually leads the league in rushing. He was over 100 yards from scrimmage Saturday. Just your overall satisfaction with how he's adapted. Yeah,
it's tough losing players, but it's going to happen in free agency, and you have to rely on your personnel department to bring in new talent. And I know our personnel department was feeling pretty confident that they had some guys that had experience in the NFL. These guys weren't they weren't 21-year-old guys coming straight out of college, so they'd been around pro football before and thought there were some good options. And Taquan caught our eye early just because he was we call him quick twitch, able to make people miss in a small space, all those things. And so we thought he could translate pretty well to the CFL game.
up front, too, it's also 2 games now of having Jarrell Broxton and Andrew Pearson starting in their new positions at left tackle and left guard. And they've impressed so far, right?
Yeah, really, really proud of those guys. Proud of Andrew for stepping in. He's been around for a while, and he's getting a chance to play on a full-time basis, which is good for him. Broxton's a guy we've always liked when he's been available and healthy. He's been good, and so we've seen him play before, but he's doing a great job for us.
You know, when I think about guys like Broxton and Mazzell, they're both players who had opportunities. For whatever reason, it didn't work out south of the border. They both battled through injuries. I mean, when we talk to Mazzell, he hadn't played in a game in 2 years. Broxton, it's kind of the same thing. It's almost like a greater sense of appreciation. I mean, any athlete will tell you once something is taken away from them, and it's not like they take it for granted, but when it's gone and then it comes back, there's a greater sense of appreciation. And when you look at guys like Broxton and Mazzell, and there's other players on the team that I imagine kind of fit the bill, but those two come to the forefront. They cherish this opportunity, and you're not going to see any question in terms of effort when it comes to a guy like Mazzell or Broxton.
No, they do. And the other thing is that for the guys that have not been up to the CFL or to Canada yet, is you don't understand it till you get here. Just what a big deal it is to play in the CFL and the great fan base and the great environments and all that stuff. And so you get a taste of it real quickly if you're not from the CFL of just understanding how important the teams are to each city and all that stuff. So good for them, for those guys for stepping in.
We always talk about transitioning from the American game to the Canadian game. Which position do you think has the toughest transition?
Quarterback for sure.
Yeah,
you're talking about 11 guys to 12 guys and motion and the size of the field and how big the zone windows are, and there's a whole list of things that would be it's the most complex position to play. So there's that, and then the receivers and DBs, it really takes a while usually for them to catch on. The defensive backs really have a tall order too. You're seeing a bunch of different motion and different sets, and it's amazing when those guys always talk about, if you go back and even watch an NFL game, everything's just much more quiet. People line up stationary, and there's not as much stuff happening. So usually those positions are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and you talk to DBs, the biggest thing that they got to get used to the waggle. I mean, so many of these Americans just sit at the line of scrimmage and jam. You can't do that in the Canadian game. The receivers, you talk to them, and it's the waggle, it's the extra DB.
Yeah.
You talk to the defensive lineman, it's a yard off the ball. You talk to the offensive lineman even, and it's that angle sometimes in their drop steps. I mean, just every position, there's some sort of transition that has to be made.
Yeah, that's what's so good about the CFL is it is different. It's still football. It's still blocking and tackling and throwing and catching and doing all those things, but it is definitely a different game, and that's why it is what it is, and why people like it, because it is a different game, and that's a good thing that should be embraced.
All right. Head coach Nik Campbell is our guest here at Resurrection Spirits. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will talk about the big game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coming up on Thursday. All that and more. You're listening to BC Lions on Tap on AM 730 in the Lions Audio Network.
Now, back to Lions on Tap. Here again is Bob Marjanovich.
BC Lions on Tap coming to you tonight from Resurrection Spirits at 1672 Franklin Street in Vancouver. It's the Moj. Bob Marjanovich, Matt Baker, Nik Kowalski from LionsAudio.com. Head coach Nik Campbell is our guest. This is where you people can clap again, make some noise. There we go. We're sitting there clapping as we went to break. So, Coach, you got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this week. And I remember talking, I think it was after the first Winnipeg game last year, you said that there was almost too much emphasis, there's too much hype getting into that game. Is that something you're focusing on this year, is to try to keep it more even keel heading into the Winnipeg game?
Yeah, it's not that not trying to downplay it, but I think that's the one time we got out of sorts last year. We were so excited to play those guys, and like we were out to go prove something. And Game 3 of 18 is not the place to prove something. It's not going to make or break our season. I don't mean to downplay it, but if we go in and win that game, it doesn't mean they're going to award us the Grey Cup. So we just need to focus on ourselves and play good football. They're a very good team. But but at the same time, like I said, we want to make sure we're getting ourselves ready to play good football on the road against a good team, and we'll see what happens.
Well, when you look at this Winnipeg Blue Bomber team, 2-time Grey Cup champions back-to-back, they almost won another one last year. Are they the litmus test right now for any CFL team?
Yeah, I think so. If you look at the last few years, and their quarterback's playing really well. So Claros is playing really well. They're a really veteran team too. If you go look down at their roster, they have guys that have been around quite a while. So they have a core group of guys that have been there, and they've been rolling pretty good. So, but every year's a new year. But yeah, they're if you beat those guys, it means you played a good football game.
Playmakers in a lot of spots, but guy we're familiar with, Janarian Grant, took one there to the house in Saskatchewan. I'm sure that's a big part of the special teams film study. How do you prepare for a guy like that, or is it anything out of the ordinary?
Yeah, it's he's super fast. He's been getting better too. He's been in this league for a while now.
Yeah,
and he's been getting better. But he's super fast. So if you make mistakes, he makes you pay for it. So it really is covering with 12 guys. Another great part of the CFL game is emphasis on returns and a big field. The big thing is the 65-yard wide field, and when guys can run that fast, it obviously causes problems. So, yeah, that'll be a point of emphasis, and but we need to get after him and take that challenge head on.
Coach, last year at times special teams were an issue, and this year I know in talking to you, you feel a lot more confident, a lot more positive about what's going to occur, given the fact that you feel you're more athletic on the bottom, say, third of your roster.
Yeah, there's those spots where the guys that play on what we call the big four, which is kickoff return, punt return, is you need a core group of guys that can perform on all four of those teams every game. You're talking about anywhere from 25 to 30 plays of the game. That's very big, and so that's been a huge part. We've also got our bearings. Terry Williams was a big part of last year of getting a guy like him. If you took our return game after we got him, I think we would be top 3 in the league. So that was a big get. And then, acquiring guys like Sean White, like we did last year, those just make a huge difference as far as the specialists go.
The one thing too, like when I've seen great special teams, and I think of the Lions teams in the past when they had Iraqi here, he was kind of like the special teams captain. It's almost like you have that 2 or 3, well, maybe one player or maybe 2 or 3 players on that special teams unit that take great pride in it and get everybody else to buy in. Do you feel like you have that with your team, and who might be some of those guys?
Yeah, I think we're getting there, and Iraqi would be a big 4 guy, exactly what I said, and that he plays on those every single game, and continuity is a huge part of it too, and we've been able to have that so far this year, and we're striving to keep that continuity, and part of that continuity is having good players on it, and we have guys that have been around for a while, like Messam. Josh Archibald's a guy that stepped up last game and made 3 tackles. We're also dressing 2, they're called designated Americans now, but non-American starters. And it's the first time we've been able to do that since I've been here, which is another big thing because you get another American linebacker on there that's a all-around good special teamer. So that's part of our roster strengthening as well, is being able to dress those guys. So it's been a group effort so far, and we still have work to do, but we're hoping we get better as the weeks go by.
Another big storyline this week, too, is that Lucky Whitehead is set to return to the lineup. And I noticed maybe you look on social media, you see Lucky, he's dancing or he's having a good time. But also, I think maybe one underrated aspect with him, he's a leader in that receiver room. And you get that back on the field, especially with Dominic Grimes. Brian Burnham's not going to be on this trip, obviously. So how important is it to have Lucky back in that aspect?
Brian Burnham's not playing this game?
Breaking
news.
From the breaking news wire. Yeah.
Breaking news from Nick. Just kidding. You're exactly right. Lucky's. I'll tell you what. His training camp, he was showing up every day to come to work, and if you watch him at practice today, he was diving after balls and really working at it. So you're right. He's a great guy to have back. We're not going to have Rhymes or Hatcher this week. We haven't had Hatcher. And we're hoping that it's possible we get all 3 of those guys going next week. So we've been kind of having to hold down the fort, kind of mixing it around where Lucky was out last week, but Rhymes was in. Now it's going to flip-flop this week. And you're right. A guy like Lucky's great to have out there this week.
You talk about that work ethic, and, you have a solid leadership core on a team that kind of sets the example, so to speak. I'm hearing stories about Vernon Adams showing up at 5:30 at the facility, leaving at like 7. How much of that work ethic that the team has is just following the lead of a guy like Vernon and other leaders on the team?
It's big. Yeah, quarterbacks have to do it to be successful these days. It can't be a deal where you just walk in the door and walk out. You got to do extra work, and it's not about putting on a show. It's not about, look at me, I got here first and I walked out last. There's actually stuff to do as far as film study and game planning and doing all those things. So good for him. Vernon's been an excellent teammate ever since he's been here. You're right in that he is there early and leaves late, but he's not doing it just to, like I said, just to put on a show. He's doing it because it matters and it helps you win. And I think that's where it translates, where you can be a real leader, is that people see how it translates, that the work you do put in results in, better outcomes.
Before we get to Nik Kowalski's world-famous trivia and wrap things up, I'm going to ask you a question, even though I know what the answer is going to be. And please don't tell me you need to get off to a great start and execute, but what do you need to do in Winnipeg to come out of there with a win?
I think we have to create some big plays. I know my answer is always high energy and start fast, which is true. I think we're going to have to, on defense, we're going to have to create some turnovers, create some momentum swings, and same thing on offense, and have some bigger plays. And I would say that basically almost any week we play. But Winnipeg would highlight in the CFL, it takes big plays to win games, whether that's offense, defense, or special teams. And they make you emphasize it more because they're such a good team.
Yeah. All right. Kowalski, every week he does this trivia thing.
Is this the Nick makes us look bad?
Actually, no. Actually, Baker and I are a pretty good team because I remember everything from like 1970 to 1990, and then Bake takes over, right?
So what do I have, the 50s and 60s?
No. You get the 70s and 80s. You'll be like
all of it.
You'll realize this.
All
So,
right.
Nick, what do you got for us today?
Well, I went with a current day question, and I was thinking about this game. The theme I came up with first word was continuity, and the question I have for you guys, there are 12 Blue Bombers and Lions who have played over 100 CFL games already that we'll address in this game. Name them.
Adam Bighill.
That's 1.
Bola Cumbo.
That's 2.
TJ Lee.
That's 3.
Gary Peters.
Incorrect.
No,
must be close.
He's short. He's going to hit it this year.
Okay.
100 games?
Over 100 games in the CFL.
Zach Caleros.
Sean White.
Caleros is another one. Sean White is tied for the most.
So Sean White,
He's 48 for crying out loud. You better be up there.
So you got 5.
So we got 5 of 12.
You're missing a couple offensive linemen on the Bombers.
Jamarcus Hardrick.
That's 6.
Stanley Bryant.
Wow.
He's tied with White for the most at 187.
Stanley Bryant, wow. Okay.
187, both White and Bryant.
So we're at 7 of 12, right?
Stanley Bryant played for the Calgary Stampeders when I was with the Calgary
That
Stampeders.
tells you all you need to
That's
know.
all
you got 2 defensive linemen on the Bombers.
Jefferson.
Yep.
Jeff Coate. Well, he's not
Nope.
playing.
Jeff Coate. That's another wrong one. That's 2 wrong. He's been there a while.
Jake Thomas.
Jake
Yeah, there
Thomas,
goes.
yeah.
His third most games, 169. You're missing one more offensive lineman on the Bombers, another offensive lineman on the BC Lions.
Suk Chung.
There he is.
So an offensive line. Pat Neufeld.
That's correct. And there's one more player. He's a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. He just hit this mark.
I was going to say Brian Burnham, but you reminded us that he's not playing. So.
This guy just hit this mark. He's a Bombers. He plays on the Bombers. I'll leave it at that right now.
So one more Blue Bomber.
Plays on offense. I'll give you a hint there.
Dembski.
There you go. Just hit the mark.
There you go.
Good job.
Do you want to guess who's next? Who's up next?
Who? Gary Peters.
He's a BC Lion. He's second next.
Okay. Who?
Michael Couture.
Really?
Yeah. 94 games he started.
Nick, great stuff.
you
Coach,
go.
great.
All right.
You contributed there. It was good, so thank you very much. Guys, it's been great being here at Resurrection Spirits, and a big thank you to Mark Woodall, Chris Meyer, and the staff. Thank you, folks. Great night here at Resurrection.
Great job.
If you're in the neighborhood, pop on by 1672 Franklin. We're going to be here for a little bit longer. Coach, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
And joining us tonight. Matt and Nick, great stuff.
See you on the plane.
And, of course, Mike Whittingham, our executive producer, doing all this work behind the scenes. That's a wrap for us tonight. Lions and the Bombers. Game time is 4:30 pregame show on AM 730 on Thursday. Kickoff at 5:30. Hope you can join us then. You're listening to BC Lions on Tap on AM 730 in the Lions Audio Network.